with Billy Napier, Mario Cristobal, and Mike Norvell running Florida, now the state of, it seems evident the recruiting script is going to flip at least to some degree. Which program from the state of Florida becomes the next college football playoff contender in the next 2 to 5 years? Could there be 2 teams from the state? Well, here's the direction I go, since there's not a whole lot of skill in forecasting this right now. You would think if you didn't know anything about recruiting, you just watched the sport from like 500,000 feet, you just watched it from space, you would think Florida State's got to be the answer here, just because their coaching staff's been there longer. You got brand new staffs in Coral Gables and Gainesville. That's actually not my answer. I think there's a huge wild card element with Florida State right now. You know, the goal, we talked about this the other night, the goal amongst the fan base right now is get us 8 wins this year. How do we get to 8 wins? Then we'll worry about the future once we can secure that 8-win threshold, because that means if we get 8 wins, we've played at a certain level, fill in the blanks. They've had to rely on the transfer portal heavily. They haven't had the classical reboot because things were a mess there. And like we've said many times, we credit Mike Norvell for being honest about how big a mess that he inherited. Well, we're talking about the future here. So is he going to get Florida State to a playoff caliber before Billy Napier does at Florida, before Mario Cristobal does at Miami? I'm not so sure of that, but I'm not taking an emphatic stance either way. This is spring. This is fence riding season. So I'm riding the fence. I think it's going to be either Florida State, Miami, or Florida. How's that? But in all seriousness, I just go where the recruiting wins take me. And so the recruiting wins, I guess, they take me a little bit more down towards Miami. It's not that I doubt Billy Napier and his staff are going to recruit at a reasonably high level, certainly better than the previous staff did, because they're going to emphasize it more. They'll just be better at it. But I don't have any doubt about how Miami's going to recruit. None. I mean, one of the biggest shocks over the next 5 years in college football would be if Miami wasn't consistently cracking the top 10 or higher in the 24/7 Sports team recruiting rankings. And there will be a fixture in that. Now look, I understand how this game works. I understand that acquiring the talent, or as we put it, going and getting the groceries, no, it doesn't automatically make the meal. But on the other side, we also understand no one ever made a meal with crap ingredients. And that's a really, really harsh way of saying what they've had there hasn't been good enough. Got to get better with better ingredients. They will get those better ingredients. And because of that, if you're asking me to choose from a group of relative unknowns in terms of their future, I think I would choose Miami. I wouldn't be surprised if it were Florida. I'd be more surprised if it were Florida State. But there's not a shock from any of these programs. I will reiterate, as I have a million times, this will just be 1,000,001. I will reiterate, if you're out there, where do we want to put you tonight? Let's put you at Washington State. Let's say you're in Pullman, Washington, and you root for the Cougars, but also you're a college football fan. You don't want the same 3 or 4 programs with a death grip on the sport. This is where your attention needs to be. It needs to be with your program first, and then the state of Florida. And to a lesser degree, I guess it'd be counterintuitive for you to pull for Southern California. But if you want to pull for Texas, Texas A&M, and then the big 3 in Florida on the recruiting trail, it will behoove you. If you want that imbalance at the top of the sport, if you want competitive balance at the top of the sport, rather, it will greatly behoove you to have a recruiting shift. That's where it's at. I will sing that song until I'm blue in the face. The expansionist crowd's over here telling you the answer to solving the competitive imbalance equation is with expanding the playoff. It's garbage. That's not the way. The only way is if recruiting in Florida changes, while recruiting in Texas changes, while recruiting in Southern California changes. You do that, and it doesn't matter how big your playoff is or how small your playoff is, you will have a more competitive sport at the top. Never going to be where it's a wide open field where 30 teams could win at any given year. But there is a big difference in going into a season where 3 or 4 teams have a legit shot as opposed to 10 to 12 teams. Huge difference, monumental difference. Your expansion playoff, that's not going to do that. But changing the recruiting dynamic is. And folks like Napier, Cristobal, Lincoln Riley, Mike Norvell, Steve Sarkisian, Jimbo Fisher, those are the guys who could get that done.